folks burning down their homes and all of that. So from an early age, he had in him an instinct and a commitment to fighting racial oppression and racial terrorism, and to standing up for those who needed to be defended and supported and heard. And so his life, his evolution in the Nation of Islam, to Orthodox Islam, to his organizational genius in developing the Organization of African American Unity, his public speeches and affirmations, his support for working class people, his absolutely rejection of white supremacy in all its forms, and his dignity and pride in standing up and defending our human rights. He was a big friend of Africa, visited the continent several times. He was very close to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, by the way, and he stood up for African independence and self-determination. So in the eyes of many of us Pan-Africanists, El Hajj Malik al-Shabazz symbolizes the very best of manhood, African peoplehood, African pride and self-determination. And we continue to be inspired by his life, and we are reminded by the millions and millions of African people who are resisting and struggling all over the world every day, and organizing and building and leading. And the most beautiful example of that, most currently, as we were talking about earlier off here, is what is happening in the Sahel, the revolutionary fervor that has gripped that region, and the changes that really are remarkable. And we see the seeds of Malcolm in all of these activities. We see young people who are becoming more self-reliant and questioning authority and the status quo, and who are yearning for something different, who are yearning to control their destiny, economic destiny, their social destiny and political destiny in ways that really affirm who we are as a people. And so he stands as a beacon of exemplary leadership, of self-reliance and self-determination, of resourcefulness, of activist, principled commitment to the very best of being African. And so we honor him, and we celebrate his life and his legacy.
Now, beyond who his father was, what were the circumstances of his birth, and what were his early years like? So
the American South was very segregated. Some would say it still is, as you know. And the status of black folks was very diminished at that time in terms of every indicator of life and well-being, employment, social engagement, and so on. Highly segregated environments that were very, very racist, and racial violence and racial terrorism was more blatant and more pronounced. And folks would be lynched at the drop of a hat. Folks would be, if they exhibited the kind of leadership that would be inspiring, they would be killed. And the court systems, of course, were stacked against any justice for black folks. Often the Ku Klux Klan, which actively recruited and involved members of the police force, paramilitary organizations, really ruled the day. So he came out of that fire of oppression and degradation that burnt in him from an early age a spirit of resistance and resolution to actually do something about it. Now, in his earlier years, after he left school because he was discouraged from being a lawyer. He wanted to become a lawyer, and told to focus on carpentry or something mechanical because he was good with his hands. Even though he was the brightest in his class, he came first and everything. And he turned to a life of crime for some time. And it was during that time, when he was incarcerated, he came to the religion of Islam. And it opened his eyes and opened his consciousness. And he read voraciously. He said at one point he read the dictionary cover to cover because he was embarrassed having a debate with another prisoner, and the prisoner was using words that he didn't understand what they meant, and folks were laughing at him. So he made a determination in his life that ignorance was never going to be his friend. So from that point on, he studied and read relentlessly, to the point where Brother Malcolm was debating university professors and easily winning, was appearing on national television programs, discussing and debating issues of the day and holding his own in ways that were just so powerful. You would have thought that this was a man with 3 PhDs, even though he never finished high school. He never went beyond grade 9. And so he went through the fire, and as the spokesperson, the national spokesperson for the Nation of Islam, our brother was instrumental in energizing and captivating a national audience of black folks, increasing membership in the nation by many, many thousands, building new mosques all over. And really his eloquence and his clarity in speaking and inspiring folks caught the attention of the national media and of course the attention of the government. And there are some things that happened as a result of that. But he caught fire. He caught fire. He became the symbol of African pride and resistance and struggle. He became the voice of the people in many ways. And his life was dedicated to defending and supporting our people. He went to Mecca and explored a more expansive version of the religion of Islam, and came back a bit more sobered in his thinking that skin color wasn't the only arbitrator of someone's level of commitment to justice, but the American condition was a particular one. And while he didn't continually condemn white folks because of their whiteness, he was very leery of being involved, but he realized that allies come in all shades and all religions. His later years were spent organizing the Organization of African American Unity, which was modeled on the Organization of African Unity. On his visits to the continent, he started to expand his thinking around the American condition, not just being one of civil rights, but of human rights. Same human rights condition that affected and impacted Africans on the continent who were still in the bondages of colonization. And so he expanded his thinking to be much more internationalist in terms of his orientation, and developed really strong partnerships with leaders on the continent. He was coming into his own in a different and more powerful way, I believe, because he had a very strong Pan-Africanist focus and commitment. And I believe it would have been tremendously revolutionary in other ways if he were still alive. But you know, things happen and they happen, and we build on it. Yes.
Well, we're also going to take a short break, and we are talking to Nene Kwesi Afele, who is a researcher, and we are talking about the centenary of Malcolm X. When we come back, I'd like to ask how he found his way into Islam in prison. What were the factors which pushed him to Islam in prison? Short break.
Mido, Gana Biana. I'm for you to be so every time I just say baby shit. Mangashi.
Junior! I'm saying so enough for maybe the no. Sister Coast Pa. It's a winning gas. I'm using the why. Why?
Down Yankanawa.
Sister Coast. Use gas. Gas ye fast, ye easy, ye convenient.
LPG, let me see your hand.
Welcome back to Talk Time, and we've been in a conversation about the legendary Malcolm X. And we are in this conversation with Nene Kwesi Afele, who is a researcher. Now, Nene, how did Malcolm get into Islam? What drove him to Islam?
So when Malcolm was in prison, he went to prison for robbery. He was so violent that they gave him the name Satan. That was his nickname in prison, Satan. He met an inmate who was a Muslim and who recognized how intelligent and brilliant he was even in his negative, violent state in prison. And he started to talk to him about his identity and who he was, and shared with him information about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and connected him with other Muslim inmates. And he started to read. And reading transformed Malcolm to the point where when the prison chaplain came to give his lectures and Brother Malcolm was in the audience, it became something else. He challenged him at every turn around racism and Christianity and the different kinds of contradictions that the Bible proposed and so on, that he became an irritant to them. So much so that they had to cancel the chaplaincy services. And his fervor and interest grew in his determination to know more about himself. And as he heard and read about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he came to believe that Islam was a vehicle that could help him to transform himself. And so he became a member of the Nation of Islam. He converted while he was in the penitentiary. One of his brothers was already a member, and so the transition wasn't as difficult for him. And so when he left prison, it was easier for him to connect. And he met Mr. Muhammad and became an ardent student and studied diligently and followed and listened and learned, and had a chance to be mentored and supported. And he grew in his faith and his confidence. And that growth led to him becoming the national spokesperson for the nation and its chief recruiter. And because he came from the streets, he had a special connection to regular working class street people. He knew all the pimps and the prostitutes and the drug dealers as well. He knew how they thought, he knew their behavior, he knew the street code, the practices. He was one of them. He used to be one of them. So it made it easier for him to connect, to excite, to incite, and to build with those from the grassroots, because that's where he came from. And so his awakening, his political and spiritual awakening, was certainly founded in the religion of Islam.
How did you break with the Nation of Islam? Why?
Well, as with many revolutionary movements in the United States, the government had a part in it. The government had a counterintelligence group called COINTELPRO, still exists, I believe, that actively monitored through the FBI individuals who they felt were a significant threat to national security and who might be important enough in terms of galvanizing or motivating large groups of folks. And so they would monitor and surveil Brother Malcolm on all his trips. They would bug his rooms. They would pay informants to be in his inner circle to get intelligence. All of that was happening at the same time when Malcolm was at his height in terms of his level of public awareness and media attention. Some of that rubbed some members the wrong way. They felt the spotlight was not as much on the founder, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as it should be, and it was moving more to Brother Malcolm. He was getting all the requests for interviews. He was being asked to speak, to lecture. He was a dynamic speaker, an incredible speaker. And I'm sure you've heard his speeches. You could listen to them all day. It was just incisive and brilliant. So the combination of the government sowing seeds of discord and planting folks as intelligence with the kind of emerging bad blood among some who felt that he shouldn't be getting so much stature and attention and so on. All of that came to a boil. And it came to a boil as well when he found out some information about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's personal life that he wanted to reconcile and to come to terms with, but he was rebuffed. And so when the final break came, it was relating to the shooting, the assassination of President Kennedy. And he made a comment about chickens coming home to roost, that the violence that America has fomented and encouraged has now come back on her biggest leader, the president. And for that statement, even though the statement was not inaccurate, Honorable Elijah Muhammad felt it was incendiary and it was inappropriate for the time because the nation was mourning a popular president. And so he was suspended. And his suspension said that he could not speak publicly for 90 days. And during the suspension, when all the other issues started to emerge, there became a kind of a campaign internally of information that really castigated Brother Malcolm and further drove him away. So the split, he never reconciled the split he had with his father, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which was his dearest hope and his dearest wish. And he was very saddened by that intermediaries prevented them from speaking directly and personally. He felt that would have resolved many things. Just recently, his family sued the government, FBI, and United States government for their role in his assassination. There were things that happened on the day he was killed that definitely pointed to a coordinated, planned, and executed setup of Brother Malcolm, where the police security presence that normally would be there completely disappeared. The response time in terms of getting him medical help was elongated. Lots of things that did not make sense, and they found out how much he was being under surveillance. So that's how the departure and the split came from the nation. But out of that came a renewed commitment to exploring Islam in its more traditional forms. So he went on the Hajj, visited Mecca, and out of that came a more expansive engagement with African leaders on the continent. And so he visited Ghana, he visited Nigeria, he visited several countries and spoke with students and leaders and activists and so on. So it was a very cataclysmic split with the nation, but it gave him an opportunity to actually expand his level of activism.
Well, he came to Africa.
Yes.
Had relations with Nkrumah and so
right.
on. What influenced his African perspective, and what was that perspective?
Well, he was an African through and through. I mean, Brother Malcolm didn't distinguish between Africans who were born on the continent, in the Caribbean, in the United States, in Canada, anywhere. One of his most famous expressions was, if a kitten is born in an oven, it doesn't make that kitten a cake. Right? It's still a kitten, right? A kitten is a kitten is a kitten is a cat. And so his thing was, we're Africans wherever we are. And we face the same oppressor. We face the same conditions. We face the same structural issues that continue to subjugate and exploit our people. The particular circumstances might vary slightly, but the same structural, social conditions, the political impetus for that is very similar. So anywhere African people are struggling, Malcolm identified with them. And that was his beauty. That was the essence of his liberation ethos, that he was connected with struggle of African people anywhere. He once said he could close his eyes, and if you took him into an African kitchen anywhere in the world, just to smell the food, he would know it was black people, because we're the same people, you know. And so his commitment, therefore, to African liberation and African independence was not one of sudden discovery. It was part of his commitment, his analysis, his understanding of the African reality, and his role in that, in helping with that as a leader. And so him being present in Ghana and connecting with Dr. Nkrumah was a very natural alignment, because they were cut from the same cloth. And Dr. Nkrumah, if you will recall, was significantly influenced by Marcus Garvey. Significantly. He said Marcus Garvey opened his eyes politically. And Malcolm X was a Garveyite. You know, all of the principles of Garvey, self-determination, economic self-reliance, you know, African peoplehood, all of those things, straight from Garvey. So they had a lot in common. So it wasn't surprising at all. And if he lived, I think his role would have been even more expansive in terms of the post-independence fervor that gripped the continent. I think his role would have been even more significant.
What was his vision of the world? How did he see the world, you know, becoming? How did he want the world to become?
I think you could say that Malcolm wanted to see, especially after coming from Mecca, where he thought it was possible indeed for human beings to live in unity and solidarity, as long as there was equal rights, justice, and fairness. And that Mecca showed him the possibilities of that, because he felt that the brotherhood and sisterhood he saw united under Islam provided a snippet of hope around what humankind and humanity could be like, in terms of how we dealt with each other, how we respected each other, how we respected each other's sovereignty and each other's faith and beliefs and so on. So I think he was emerging into a kind of optimism that with the right conditions and with justice and human rights, we could live side by side. Not live together in the US, because they didn't believe in integration, but we could live side by side as fully functioning human beings. But that was a ways off, you know. I think he felt that his role in that process was shifting a bit, where he now entertained and invited different perspectives on the role of race in liberation, but still held fast that the American condition was such that racism was still at the root of everything, and that white supremacy had to be something that had to be driven out. Otherwise, you know, capitalism would still proliferate, and we would have the kind of social injustices that continue today, based on a system of white supremacy. So yes, he saw the possibilities of a better world, and I think he aspired to that, but with eyes wide open, that to get there, we had a lot of work to do.
Obviously, we're going to take another short break from this conversation on Malcolm X, the centenary of his birth. And when we come back, we'd like to focus attention on how the centenary will be observed here in Ghana and perhaps elsewhere in the world. We're talking Malcolm X. Short break.
Mido, Ghana Biana. I'm for Jibby Baby Swing every time upon I just a baby shit.
Junior! I'm saying so now for maybe the no. Sister Coast pa. It's who gas. I'm using the why. My why.
Down yankana wa.
Sister Coast. Use gas. Gas ye fast, ye easy, ye convenient. And wow.
LPG, let me see your hand.
Hello, welcome back to Talk Time, and as I said, we are talking Malcolm X. We're actually talking about the centenary of his birth, and we are talking with Nene Kwesi Afele, a researcher, and we want to find out how the centenary will be observed. What are the ingredients? Where would it happen? What is the theme? You know, everything about the observance of the centenary. Nene, how are we observing the centenary of Malcolm X?
Well, there are activities happening all over the world. We in Cape Coast decided we would do several things. The first thing was we would galvanize our energies to produce a moment of affirmation for our brother in this his 100th year. And that moment of affirmation includes several things. We are in the process of preparing a statue, a Malcolm X statue that's 12 feet high. I sent you pictures of the statue being prepared. It will be ready in time for his birthday next week. And that statue is going to be located in Cape Coast at our center. We're still figuring out the logistics and the details of that. We have organized and formed the Malcolm X Liberation Institute. 4 of us, myself, Baba Yao, Victor Boselil, Nana Kwa, Whitaker, and Rabbi Cohen, who I'm sure you know, Rabbi. And we are excited about what the center will do. We're going to be having on the 18th dinner, a legacy dinner and celebration, honoring our brother, where we're going to have greetings, Pan-African greetings from all over the world.
In Cape Coast?
Yes, in Cape Coast. We'll have greetings from people doing work on the ground in different places and affirming how Malcolm has influenced their lives and their works. We're going to have a cultural presentations. We're going to have the Paramount Chief and his retinue will be present. It's going to be an exciting day for us. On the 19th, his actual birthday, we'll be having a conference. We're going to be looking at Malcolm's influence in the political and economic and social sphere. And we have different people on a panel who will be speaking to that. We have workshops on economic self-reliance and political organizing and young people activism and so on. We're going to unveil pictures of the statue, and it's also going to be live streamed. So it will be live streamed around the world. Anyone can access and observe the event. There'll be a cultural component as well, a couple of keynote speakers, and we're going to cut a cake in his honor. We're going to have a raffle with some beautiful artwork. We're going to have beautiful t-shirts that folks could purchase. It's going to be a beautiful event. We are working on a couple of surprises in terms of attendees. I don't want to say who they are as yet, but if you are interested, please contact us. You know, we have our website. I'm sure you put it up under your program as well, and the phone number. So it's going to be at the Vix Court Event Center in Cape Coast on the 18th and 19th of May.
So it's a 2-day event?
2-day event, yes. And we're going to be opening the statue. The official unveiling will take place when the statue is finally located at its final ground. But we're definitely going to give a sneak preview of the statue on both days so people see what it looks like. And it's shaping up to be very, very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. And it's going to be a tourist attraction as well for our people.
Now, if there's somebody who is living in a place like Tamale or Bolga and so on, how does he join this celebration?
Well, you could donate to help us. You could go to our website to see what's happening, and you could also join the live stream. The live stream link will be on the website in a few days. And so you can participate in those ways as well. If you're not physically in Cape Coast, you could join us virtually.
Well, thank you very much, Nene, for coming.
Brother, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so very much. Well, viewers, we've been talking to Nene Kwesi Afele, who's a researcher. I've been talking about the centenary celebration of our legendary African hero, Malcolm X. Please join the celebration, and he showed you how to join the celebration. You can go to the website, you can participate in the online conference, you can go to Cape Coast if you have the means on the 18th and 19th, or you can just watch the proceedings online. Be a part of the celebration of the centenary of this very, very great African. Thank you all very much for watching the program. And please keep your dial on Pan-African Television. Until we meet again next week. Bye-bye from George Binair, producer of the program, Adam Lumo, the director, and all of us at Pan-African Television. Bye-bye.
Truly African.
Especially when nature is not on your side.
نبقى عود سين عندنا في الدشرة عود كيف